Amara had always believed that friendship was safer than love. Love demanded too much. Love asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. So she stayed in the comfort of her best friend, Lydia, the girl who knew her secrets, her fears, and the reason she laughed too loudly when love came up in conversation.
But before I continue, a shout out to Mrs. Edwards from Kenya. If you also want me to give you a shout out in my next video, like, subscribe, share, and drop where you are watching from.
They had met years ago, struggling together in the same city, dreaming different dreams but sharing the same pain. Lydia was bold, outspoken, the kind of woman who loved loudly. Amara was quieter, emotional, the kind who felt things deeply but hid it behind smiles. Every evening after work, they sat on the balcony of their small apartment, talking about life, heartbreaks, and the future. "Do you think real love still exists?" Lydia asked one night. Amara smiled faintly. "I think it exists, just not for everyone." She didn't know that at that same moment, somewhere across the city, two men were having the same conversation. Daniel and Marcus had been friends for over 15 years. They had grown together, failed together, and learned how to survive together. Marcus was the funny one, always joking, always chasing women without thinking twice. Daniel, however, was different, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who loved once and never forgot. They sat in Daniel's car after a long day, the engine off, the city lights glowing. "Why don't you just fall in love again?" Marcus asked casually. Daniel stared ahead. "Because the last time I did, I lost myself." Marcus sighed. "One day, someone will remind you who you are." Daniel didn't reply. He didn't believe it. But destiny was already rearranging their lives. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Lydia dragged Amara to a friend's small gathering. Amara didn't want to go, but Lydia insisted. "You can't keep hiding from life," Lydia said. That was where they met Daniel and Marcus. The room was loud with laughter, but when Amara looked up and her eyes met Daniel's, the noise faded. Something unfamiliar settled in her chest. Daniel felt it too, an unexpected pull, gentle but undeniable. They didn't speak much that day, just glances, small smiles, quiet curiosity. But when they left, both carried something home with them. Days turned into weeks. Group chats became private messages. Short conversations turned into long late-night talks. Daniel learned that Amara loved old songs and cried during sad movies. Amara learned that Daniel wrote poems but never showed anyone. Marcus noticed. Lydia noticed too. "You like him," Lydia teased. Amara shook her head. "I'm just talking to him." But her heart knew the truth before she did. Marcus started showing interest in Lydia. They laughed easily, flirted openly, and everyone assumed they were perfect together. But while Lydia was falling fast, Marcus was unsure. Meanwhile, Daniel and Amara were growing closer emotionally, sharing fears they had never spoken out loud. One night, Daniel confessed quietly, "I'm afraid to love again." Amara replied with tears in her eyes, "I'm afraid of not being loved enough." They didn't touch, but their hearts already had. Everything changed when Lydia announced she liked Marcus. Amara froze. Daniel grew distant. Friendship lines blurred. Guilt crept in. Amara tried to pull away from Daniel, believing it was the right thing to do. Daniel respected her silence, even though it hurt him deeply. They began missing each other quietly. Marcus, confused and afraid of commitment, hurt Lydia by pulling away. Lydia cried in Amara's arms. Why does love hurt this much? Amara had no answer. Daniel watched from a distance, torn between loyalty to his friend and love for Amara. Everyone was hurting. Everyone was silent. One night, Amara and Daniel met unexpectedly in the rain. Why did you disappear? Daniel asked. Because loving you felt like betraying my friend, Amara cried. Daniel stepped closer. And losing you feels like losing myself. They stood there, soaked, hearts exposed, and finally they kissed. Not out of passion, but out of truth. The truth came out. Lydia, heartbroken but honest, admitted she had sensed it all along. If loving him makes you whole, she told Amara through tears, then don't deny yourself happiness because of me. Marcus apologized for his mistakes, realizing too late what he had lost. Friendship was bruised, but not broken. Daniel and Amara didn't rush. They chose patience. They chose healing. They chose honesty. Love grew slowly, stronger than fear, deeper than pain. On a quiet evening, Daniel held Amara's hand and whispered, I didn't find love. Love found me again. Amara smiled through tears, and this time, I'm not afraid. Years later, they still sat with their friends, laughing, remembering how love almost passed them by. Sometimes, the greatest love stories don't begin with passion. They begin with friendship, patience, pain, and courage. And when they finally bloom, they last forever.